Well, the woke leftist identitarian cancel mob is back on the warpath, and today their tribe claimed one of the biggest scalps of all for beginning next season. After 107 years of Cleveland Indians baseball, the Cleveland Indians will be no more. The team that takes the field next spring will be officially known as, wait for it, the Cleveland Guardians. Now, this news just broke a few hours ago, buried on a Friday afternoon, just like all news stories that are likely to inspire widespread public backlash. And there's been much discussion about it already, but nobody is talking about why the Cleveland Indians became known as the Cleveland Indians in the first place. But when you need historical context that you are never going to get from the performance art news media or the nauseatingly woke sports media, that is why you come to this program. Louis Sockalexis was a left-handed hitting outfielder and a full-blooded Penobscot Indian, born on the reservation in 1871, who by most accounts was the first Native American player in the major leagues. His career was a brief one, lasting only from 1897 to 99, and despite a lifetime batting average of .313, all three of those seasons were spent with the Cleveland National League Club, which at that time was commonly known as the Spiders. And yes, Cleveland was actually a National League city at that time, but more on that later. An important thing to mention as we're setting the scene is that at the turn of the last century, sports teams didn't really have official nicknames and brand identities in the same sense that they do today. The official name of every team was city name, baseball club. Team nicknames happened purely organically. They were often invented by sports writers and headline writers, and the dominant nickname was whichever ones the fans decided they liked the best. And sometimes it wasn't always a settled matter. From one year to the next, a team might have one nickname, three nicknames, or no nicknames. Because teams didn't have nicknames on their uniforms at this stage, or names on their uniforms, or numbers on their uniforms, there wasn't a team store full of apparel for the fans to purchase. So the club owners didn't really give a damn what nickname their teams were known by. The only adornment on a home baseball uniform was the logo on the cap, which was sometimes, though not always, repeated on the left chest of the jersey. On the road uniform, some teams wore their city name, but that didn't become a standard thing until well into the 1920s. Now, taking the Yankees as an example, they were known as the Hilltoppers and then the Highlanders before they finally settled on Yankees just a few years before the arrival of Babe Ruth. If you look at photos of the Yankees from pre-1927, the cap logo is the only thing on the uniform. They didn't add it to the jersey until the famous 1927 Murderers Row season, which was the same year they became the first club to wear jersey numbers. Over in Brooklyn, that club was popularly known as the Superbas and then as the Robins before they settled on Dodgers around the same time that their American League counterparts over in the Bronx settled on being called the Yankees. Other teams wound up nicknamed, of course, by the color of their hosiery, like the Chicago White Stockings and the Boston Red Stockings. But in both of those cases, the exigencies of newspaper headline writing resulted in the shortening of stockings to SOX. No one's really sure why the Cleveland Spiders were called the Cleveland Spiders. It certainly is one of the rarest sports nicknames on the continent. And I say that with all due respect to any alumni of the University of Richmond who might happen to be watching, but it would seem the Cleveland fans weren't particularly attached to it because once this Penobscot Indian outfielder showed up and started hitting the cover off the ball, he became the face of the team for those 3 years. So much so that Indians began to supplant Spiders as the nickname by which the team was most commonly known. But the Cleveland National League Club became insolvent and collapsed not long after Louis Sockalexis' tenure there had ended. And in 1903, when the American League was established, Cleveland became one of its charter cities. By the time we get to 1915, the Cleveland Club is most commonly known as the Naps because their manager and best player is Hall of Fame shortstop Napoleon Lajoie. But that year, the ownership of the club decides, hey, let's go ahead and establish a permanent official nickname and brand identity because it's all the rage right now. So they conducted what was probably history's first Name the Team contest. And what name won? Indians did. Now, you will often hear idiot jackass morons in the woke sports media dismissing out of hand the notion that the Cleveland Indians were named in honor of Louis Sockalexis. simply because there are 16 years between the end of his career and the adoption of Indians as the official team nickname. And that wasn't even the same franchise, they sneer. Sanctimony and self-righteousness practically oozing from their pores, so clearly, obviously, the white racist people of Cleveland named their baseball team Indians just because they wanted to insult and belittle and malign Native American people for no apparent reason. The city's baseball club was adopting an official nickname and brand identity for the first time, and it would seem self-evident that the people of the city, having all the informal names they had used in the past to choose from, decided they liked Indians the best. So you bet your sweet ass, and I will wrestle any dumb woke-tarded bastard who wants to argue the point, that the ball club damn well is and was named in honor of that Penobscot Indian outfielder with the .313 lifetime average. And you know what else I'm willing to get in a wrestling match over? The idea that anybody has ever cared about this stupid bullshit. This is a manufactured fake controversy that's been going on for upwards of 30 years now, ever since the Braves were winning their pennants back in the early 90s, and the idiotic sports media have been propping it up the entire time, even though there's no poll anywhere ever that suggests a majority of any population group is bothered by Native American team branding. Why? Because normal people with real lives do not obsess about stupid, navel-gazing, pearl-clutching horse shit. The only people who care about this crap are a tiny group of professional activists and the jackasses in the sports media who got woke about this stuff decades before woke-tardedness was even a thing. Now, when Dan Snyder lost the ability to find his testicles and agreed to drop the Washington Redskins name. Am I allowed to say Washington Redskins on YouTube? I don't even know. He at least did the wrong thing in the right way. Choosing a new nickname to replace an old nickname that the team's fans liked perfectly well is an exercise that is fraught with peril, as the Cleveland Indians found out today, when they trotted out the new Cleveland Guardians branding, and the people of Cleveland promptly said, "What the fuck is a Cleveland Guardian?" They even made up a fake story and everything, which is really quite sad, because at least own your cowardice if you're going to be a coward and bend the knee to the woke leftist identitarian cancel mob. So apparently there are a couple of statues on some bridge in Cleveland that are informally known as traffic guardians. But it seems this is all news to a lot of Cleveland Indians fans. Look, anybody with a goddamn brain in his head can see that you guys decided to just go with a new name that had the same 2 syllables as the old name. So why not tell the truth about it? Why invent a story about statues on a bridge? Do you want your ball club named after statues on a bridge? How the hell is that better than being named Indians? But Dan Snyder, to his credit, said, "Fine, I will drop the nickname, and I will replace it with nothing. And the fans can go right on calling the team the Redskins if they want to." And ultimately, in going that route, you're just winding back the clock 110 years or so to the time we were just talking about a moment ago when the official name was Washington Football Club. And any nicknames were informal and by public acclamation. And also, I bet you never thought you'd hear me say this, but this is an area where I think European soccer has us beat. Because over there, in the UK in particular, teams still don't have official nicknames. They never have. But somehow, they manage to have perfectly strong brand identities and to move plenty of merchandise. So, how many teams do we have left standing now? By my reckoning, in the pros at least, there's the Braves, the Chiefs, and the Blackhawks. Am I missing anybody? And no, Jimmy, I absolutely will not make any jokes about Heat Big Wampum, because that would be offensive. You just shut up and hit the music. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where the white man came with his fire sticks and was beaten back with swords and maces and trebuchets, because we're a bunch of badasses. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Happy Friday. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And did you happen to see President Joe Biden's CNN town hall on Wednesday night? If you didn't, don't feel bad, since it was on CNN after all, and just like everything else on CNN, viewers tended to avoid it like a flesh-eating bacterium. But if you've ever had a senile family member, say a grandpa with 1.5 feet in the grave, who's in the throes of severe cognitive decline, and once a month you pick him up from the assisted living facility and take him out to dinner at Applebee's at 2:30 in the afternoon, or maybe hometown buffet as the case may be, then you have a pretty good idea of what the dynamic looked like between President Joe Biden and Don Smell My Finger Lemon from CNN during this ridiculous shit show of a town hall. Like he's just doing his best to get Grandpa through the buffet line without any plates of food getting spilled everywhere. But it sure is nice when you are the corpse of a former segregationist senator who pretends to be the president for 2 or 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. When you have a nice young man like Don Lemon to remind you that you don't want the macaroni salad, Grandpa. Remember it gave you heartburn last time and you were cranky the whole way home? And so I want to do a compare and contrast here quickly, and you've probably seen the video clip already. It's grown quite viral. There's even a Snopes article about it. It's become rather infamous between the thing Joe Biden is trying to say and the words that actually come out of his mouth. What he's trying to say here is a very simple thing and does not require an abundance of words. He wants to say he's hopeful that the vaccines will soon have full FDA approval as opposed to emergency authorization. Now that's 16 words, and I probably could have said it in less, but let's compare it with what actually came out of the president's mouth. Quote, "And the question is whether or not we should be in a position where you are. Why can't the experts say we know that this virus is going to be, or excuse me, we know why all the drugs approved are not temporarily approved but permanently approved. That's underway too. I expect that to occur quickly." That is 59 words. 4 times he starts a sentence he does not finish. And Don Lemon immediately, helpfully, jumps in at the end and says, "You're talking about FDA approval, right, Grandpa?" And you know what Joe says then? He says, "Yes, FDA, the Food and Drug Administration." In other words, the President of the United States wants you to be impressed that he knows what FDA stands for. He's been doing this quite a bit lately, actually. ATF, that's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. It's almost like he thinks he's taking a trivia quiz or something, and who knows, he might actually think that. It wouldn't even be the strangest thing about this presidency. Probably wouldn't even be in the top 5. But let's economize the thought he was trying to express down to its bare bones. If you were doing that, you might say something like, "I am hopeful the vaccines will soon have full FDA approval." That is 11 words, so I shaved 5 off of my first attempt. But to reiterate, the President of the United States, the man who can launch nuclear missiles whenever it strikes his fancy, took 59 words and 5 disjointed sentence fragments trying to express that same thought. And he didn't even succeed. Don Lemon had to jump in and save him from himself before he went into the crowd and started randomly sniffing people's hair. Also, I found the canned crowd noise very classy and totally not obvious or embarrassing at all. Like when you have a wide crowd shot on the screen and you can see that nobody's arms are moving, but somehow there is lusty, cacophonous applause being heard, and the applause sounds exactly the same each time the president finishes speaking, even when he has just said something that can't be understood by any speaker of the native language. That is really top-notch work, CNN. This is journalisming out the wazoo. There are hot, sticky gobs of journalism flying everywhere. We will all need full-size Naked Gun body condoms to avoid being drenched in all this journalism. Oh, and did you hear the 2020 Olympics have finally begun? Here in July of 2021, as it were. If you didn't, don't feel bad. I wouldn't have had any idea either, except that I heard the glorious, poetically just news that the U.S. women's soccer team, led by angry purple-haired America-hating lesbian and Victoria's Secret lingerie model Megan Rapinoe, suffered a humiliating 3-0 ass-kicking against Sweden in their first-round game. And do I feel bad about taking gleeful delight in the misfortune of one of our national teams? No. Not even a little tiny bit. Go Sweden, well done. I would rather see people win who are proud of their country and respectful toward its people. When a team is populated with athletes who hate my country and everything it stands for, then I view that team as my enemy, and why wouldn't I? And I want them to lose, and I want them to suffer as many humiliating ass-kickings as possible. If it happens to be a U.S. team whose players hate my country, then I view that team with just as much antipathy as I felt toward the Soviet hockey team in 1980 when we kicked their ass. If you are against everything my country stands for, if you take gleeful delight in denigrating my country's flag and my country's national anthem, why again am I duty-bound to support you in your athletic endeavors? And when the Chargers fucked off and moved to LA 5 years ago, they arrogantly assumed they would still have a fan base in San Diego. They thought people would choose loyalty to a team and its brand over loyalty to their own home city. They were wrong, spectacularly wrong, and now they are a team without any fan base of which to speak. And I get the same sense from these arrogant, entitled, self-important, ungrateful Olympians who seem to think they can shit all over our country, its culture, its symbols, its founding, basically everything it has ever stood for, and still be entitled to our support. Because are you freaking kidding me? But the Olympic movement has much bigger problems right now than a U.S. team whose most prominent members avowedly detest the country they represent, because the Japanese people are about as mad right now as the Japanese people ever get. I talked the other night about how Toyota has pulled all of their advertising from the games, and that is no joke. The Olympic brand has become pretty toxic all of a sudden. The people of Tokyo, they're being locked down for the third or fourth time. They are prohibited from going about their daily lives or leaving their homes very much, and they feel like their capital city is being shut down for 2 weeks just to give the IOC and the international VIPs so they're not inconvenienced. And that's probably not that far from the truth. Volunteers for the games have been instructed to wear their full uniforms when arriving at the venue, but many of them don't want to be on the street wearing it for fear of getting their ass kicked and being attacked. Again, this is Japan we're talking about. Probably the most pathologically polite society on the face of the planet. So when those people get barking mad, that should really tell us something. I don't think there's any way around the fact that the modern Olympic movement as we know it is currently in its death throes. Will the LA Olympics in 2028 ever happen? Because I sure wouldn't bet on it. If you're living in LA right now, and you see homeless tent cities in every park under every overpass, when gingerly stepping over human feces and discarded heroin needles is a part of your everyday life, do you find yourself thinking, yes, let's host the Olympics. Let's put our fine city on the world stage. Because the way LA is going, that city hosting the Olympics in 2028 isn't going to be all that different from Rio hosting them in 2016. You've got a filthy, dysfunctional, crime-ridden third world city, and your biggest concern is going to be rounding up 75,000 vagrants at minimum and keeping them safely out of sight for a fortnight until all the visitors are gone. Even in the best case scenario, even if it comes off perfectly, how much mystique is the Olympic movement going to have left 7 years from now? As it is, we've got biological men competing in women's events in this Olympiad, so if you give the Wokesters a few more years, I bet every Olympic event is going to be a no-gender free-for-all, because it's not like the Wokesters are going to stand down one day and say, okay, you've met all our demands, we're satisfied now. Like that would ever happen. They will keep going and going and going and wrecking every institution they can get their woke little mitts on, right up until decent people stand up en masse and tell them to shut the hell up and go away already. We can only hope that day arrives sooner than later. And that is it for me. Here's wishing you a delightful, edifying weekend. See you Wednesday. Get off my lawn.